Just take a breath now. Let the day slip away. There's nothing to do and nowhere to be, just you, your breath, and the gentle hush of the night wrapping around you. Let your body grow heavy, like soft wool soaking in warmth. Notice your shoulders drop, your jaw unclench, your eyes blink a little slower. Let go if your mind wanders, that's okay. Let it drift like mist over a sleepy hillside. We'll bring it back with the sound of story, because tonight we have a journey to take. So sink in and listen close. Our story begins now. Narration begins, gentle tone, hypnotic rhythm. Our story tonight begins. In a quiet monastery, tucked deep in the rolling green hills of the old country. The year is 1347, and far from the noise of cities and wars and whispers of kings, there lies an abbey where time walks slowly, barefoot and unbothered. The stones of the abbey are warm with age, its wooden beams scented with beeswax and rain, and every morning the sun gently fingers through stained glass windows, splashing soft pinks, sleepy blues, and golden halos onto cool flagstone floors. This is a place of silence, not silence of emptiness, but of purpose, of monks humming through prayer, of cloaks brushing against stone, and of firelight dancing on the edges of old wisdom. And there, among the brothers, is a boy, no older than 16, with quiet hands and soft brown eyes that seem to listen even when he says nothing. His name is Matthias, and tonight Matthias is dreaming of glass. By day, Matthias tends the garden. He gathers herbs, lavender and mint, marjoram and sage. He scrubs the pots, fills the basins, and carries buckets of water from the stone well that sings when the wind kisses its rim. But by night, when the abbey falls to whispers and sleep, Matthias slips into the workshop at the edge of the cloister wall. There, behind a heavy oak door, lies a furnace. The furnace is ancient, built of clay and brick and soot-dark secrets, a round mouth that glows like the belly of the earth. Its heat not wild, but steady, like the pulse of a living thing. It is here that Brother Ivo teaches him, the last of the monastery's glassblowers, with hands as worn as river stones, and a voice like wind through hollow reeds. Tonight, Matthias kneels by the forge, the fire breathing a soft orange against the cool blues of twilight beyond the window. He dips a hollow pipe into the crucible of molten glass, a glowing syrup of sand, soda ash and lime stirred with alchemical care. Did you know? In those days, glass was called vitrum, a word whispered like a prayer. It was believed to be a gift from God, the result of divine fire meeting the purity of sand. Even more magical is the name they once gave it in the monasteries, the breath that never dies, because the moment a glassblower's breath entered that pipe, it lived on, frozen forever in light. Matthias inhales softly and blows, a gentle exhale, steady and slow, and the molten drop begins to grow a delicate globe, expanding, spinning on the end of the pipe like a floating thought. Brother Ivo nods in approval. Let it turn, he whispers. Let it spin like prayer beads in a quiet hand. And so Matthias turns it, the glowing orb twirling at the end of the rod, warm with life, orange fading to amber, amber softening into the clear breath of glass. He feels the hush of it, the stillness of creation, and outside the moon rises, bathing the abbey in silver, cool and serene. The bells of Compline have long since faded, and now Only the occasional rustle of ivy or a distant owl reminds them of the world. Matthias sets the globe into the annealing box, where the glass must cool slowly, like honey thickening in winter. Too fast, and it will shatter. Too slow, and it will forget its shape. Glass, like dreams, needs patience, and as he watches it rest, he thinks of the Abbey windows. Each pane, cut and soldered with lead, tells a story without words. Saints with halos like sunbursts, angels with wings of blue, dragons hiding in corners, playfully peeking through flowers, and once, Brother Ivo told him, some windows held secrets, tiny animals tucked behind saints' feet, or mysterious eyes watching from the corner of the glass, because even in the sacred the monks liked to play. Outside a breeze stirs the lavender, the leaves murmur, the night sighs, and Matthias leans back against the cool stone wall, letting the warmth from the furnace soak into his spine. He closes his eyes and he imagines the colors of the world falling like ribbons into his hands. The morning comes gently, like soft fingers brushing the surface of sleep. At Silent Abbey, the sun does not shout. It tiptoes, spilling amber light through the eastern windows, catching in dust motes that float like tiny prayers. Matthias wakes to the smell of warm bread and beeswax, his straw mattress creaking softly beneath him. He rubs sleep from his eyes, and for a long, quiet moment, he listens. A bell chimes somewhere in the distance, low and full, the voice of the Abbey itself, calling the brothers to Lauds, the first prayer of the day. Matthias dresses in simple robes, woolen, rough to the touch, but warm and familiar. His fingers trail the stone wall as he walks the narrow corridor, passing flickering sconces and sleeping doorways, every footstep an echo, every breath part of the hush. After prayers, he tends the glass. The piece he made last night is ready, cool, clear, perfect. It glistens in the pale light, like a bubble caught in time. He turns it in his hands and sees a faint ripple near the base, a memory of breath. His breath, trapped in glass. He smiles. Brother Ivo appears, silent as ever, his beard still damp from washing. He places a hand on Matthias' shoulder, rough-skinned, gentle, like bark warmed by sun. No one can teach the breath, Ivo says softly. You found yours. That day, the monks are quiet with purpose. Some work in the scriptorium, quills scratching Latin into thick vellum. Others hum hymns in the herb garden, their voices soft as petals. And in the workshop, Matthias begins. His first window, a small one, just a single circle of color. To sit above the chapel door, he selects his palette, cobalt blue. For the sea of heaven, gold made from silver chloride, crimson from crushed garnet and ancient iron, each color a miracle of alchemy. Few know that in the Middle Ages, blue was the most expensive pigment of all, rarer even than gold, because it came from lapis lazuli, a stone mined only in the far hills of Afghanistan. The Abbey has just enough, a sliver no bigger than a seed. Matthias sets it aside with reverence. As the days pass, he shapes and cuts, each pane scored with a tiny diamond tooth, snapped gently along the grain, then fired again to smooth the edges before fitting into its lead cames, those soft, silvery channels that hold glass-like arms, cradling light. He works slowly, carefully, listening to the silence between heartbeats, and each evening he returns to the furnace, where Brother Ivo teaches him the lost symbols of old masters. Some call them fire sigils, tiny, hidden signs, etched into the glass before it cools. Suns with many points, little fish, a spiral that means peace. Only the glass remembers them, says Ivo. They're not for the eyes, they're for the dreams. On the seventh day, the window is complete, small but radiant. The center glows deep blue, framed by petals of crimson and gold, and in the center a white dove, cut from milk glass, with an eye made of green tourmaline. When it catches the sun, the chapel fills with color. Brother Thomas, the Abbey's cantor, calls it a window that sings. Matthias doesn't speak, he just smiles. That night, the Abbey hosts a vigil. No feast, no celebration, just silence and candlelight. The monks sit in stillness, wrapped in prayer and shadow. Matthias sits too, hands folded. Breathing slowly, the air smells of frankincense and beeswax, and the new window casts colored ghosts on the floor. As midnight draws near, he hears it again, the glass breathing, a faint hum, almost like a whisper through reeds. A vibration, more than a sound. Brother Ivo once told him, if you listen closely, glass speaks to the soul, and tonight it is singing. The morning after the vigil is grey and still. Clouds hang low over the Abbey hills, touching the tops of trees like hands pressed gently over sleepy eyes. Mist curls between the cloisters, pooling in corners like silent visitors. Matthias wraps his cloak tighter, the wool damp and soft around his shoulders. The bells do not ring today, only the wind speaks, and it speaks in sighs. Brother Ivo does not come to the furnace at first. Matthias thinks little of it. Perhaps he is in the scriptorium, or lost in prayer. But by Vespers he learns the truth. Brother Ivo has passed. Peacefully, they say, in his sleep, like an ember fading, without smoke, without pain. Matthias does not cry. He does not speak. But that night he sits alone before the glowing mouth of the furnace and listens. The fire crackles. A gentle, rhythmic breath. It reminds him of the stories Ivo once told, of how some believed the soul left the body in a breath of wind, that the last exhale was the whisper of the spirit, joining the stars. Matthias holds the glass rod in trembling hands. The crucible glows beneath the flames. Molten and alive, he lowers the pipe and breathes slow and steady. The glass grows, but it does not bloom. It sags, then warps, then breaks. The crack echoes in the workshop like a snapped prayer. He tries again and again. Each time the glass shatters, and with it his silence. He does not return to the furnace for 3 days. Instead, he walks the outer paths of the Abbey, where ivy grips the stone like sleeping hands, and wild violets bloom in hidden corners. He thinks of Ivo's words. No one can teach the breath. What if the breath had left with him? But then, on the 4th day, he hears something new. Not the wind, not the birdsong, but a hum. So soft, it feels like a thought. He follows it to the chapel, where the stained glass window he crafted glows. Even in the grey morning, a beam of light breaks through the clouds, a single ray, striking the center of the dove. The green eye shines like emerald fire, and then the hum, faint but real. The window singing. He returns to the workshop. This time he does not rush. He does not try to shape the glass. Instead, he listens to the fire, to the forge, to the quiet that lives between heat and hand. Then he breathes, and the glass grows again. This time it holds. It gleams like honey. It spins like a slow-turning planet. He shapes a perfect orb, and in its center he traps a single green shimmer. For Ivo. In the weeks that follow, Matthias becomes the Abbey's new glassmaster. He works slowly, deliberately, creating not just windows, but chalices, tiny bluebells that ring with the softest tone. He discovers a trick Ivo never taught him. If you speak a wish into the pipe before you blow, it leaves a ripple in the finished glass, a whisper sealed in form. The monks begin asking for them. One wants a bottle to hold the scent of rosemary, another a lamp that flickers in rhythm with prayer, and still another asks for a mirror that reflects not the face, but the heart. One evening, a traveling sister arrives from a distant convent. Her name is Sister Alice. She is quiet, with silver-threaded hair and hands that tremble when she prays. She carries with her a shard of glass, wrapped in linen. She says it once belonged to a great rose window, shattered during a storm many years ago. She asks Matthias if he can give it new life. He studies the piece, a jagged curve of crimson, the color of old wine, of dried blood, of holy fire. He nods, and over the next 7 nights he melts it, shapes it, and joins it with fragments of his own. The final result, a small, round medallion, in its center, a flame, surrounded by wings. He gives it to her in silence, and when she holds it up to the sun, the chapel walls shimmer red. That night, she whispers, "I saw him in the fire." Matthias doesn't ask who, she only smiles, and leaves at dawn. The season turns once more. Winter folds itself around the Abbey like a woolen blanket. Snow falls in slow, deliberate flakes, layering the stone walls with a hush so deep even the bells seem to whisper. Inside the Abbey, everything softens. Footsteps are muffled, chants become hums, fires crackle more slowly, as if the flames themselves are listening to the snow. And in the workshop, the furnace never sleeps. Its belly glows golden orange, a tiny sun in the heart of winter. Matthias tends it with quiet devotion, feeding it with slender logs, whispering prayers under his breath, and watching the glass glow like sleeping embers. One evening, as he pulls a fresh sphere from the molten pool, he notices something unusual. Tiny bubbles, but not from error each. One is perfectly placed, suspended like stars, or seeds in amber. He holds the orb to his eye, and in the flicker of the firelight, he sees a shape, not made by hand, but formed by breath. It looks like a rose, not one etched, not one painted, but curled in the pattern of bubbles themselves. A memory of something not touched, only exhaled. The next day, he shows it to Brother Thomas. The older monk holds it gently, turning it in the light, and for a long moment he does not speak. Then, softly, "I dreamed of this, years ago, before Ivo passed, before your hands had ever touched the pipe, and yet here it is." Matthias doesn't reply, but something deep in his chest stirs, like a chord struck in stillness. Days grow shorter, nights stretch longer, and candles become the stars of the Abbey. One night, during Compline, Brother Aldwin, once the gruffest of them all, brings Matthias a small scroll. It is tied with red thread, worn soft with age. Inside a poem written by a monk long gone. It speaks of glass, and how it holds time like water holds a reflection of light, trapped in breath, of love made visible, and on the bottom, in faint ink, for the boy who listens, no name, no date, but Matthias understands it was written for someone just like him, or perhaps for him exactly, because glass, like prayer, travels in circles, snow piles high along the Abbey's outer walls. Icicles drip like crystal teeth from the eaves. The world outside grows quiet. Villagers visit less. The roads vanish beneath white silence. But inside the Abbey, creation continues. Matthias begins crafting something new. Not for the chapel, not for the monks, but for the furnace, a glass bell, hollow and clear, with veins of silver thread running through its shape like frozen lightning. Inside, a tiny filament dangles drawn from golden wire, delicate as a spider's leg. He finishes it just as the year turns, and at midnight, as the monks pray in candlelit silence, he hangs the bell above the furnace, then breathes onto it once. Softly it rings, not loud, not even sharp, but enough to stir something in the coals. A little pulse, as if the flame were breathing back. In the days that follow, others begin to hear it. When the workshop is still and the light is just right, a single note chimes without touch, a tone that feels less like a sound and more like a thought no one questions. They simply nod, smile, and return to their prayers. The seasons pass, snow melts into soil, soil brings herbs, herbs bring scent, and the Abbey breathes again in green. Matthias walks the gardens now, not just to gather, but to listen. He speaks little, but hears much, and at night he works not only with hands, but with memory. The workshop has become something more, not just a place of fire, but a sanctuary of breath. Spring arrives with a hush of blossoms. In the orchard, apple trees bloom pale pink petals, tumbling down like prayers made of silk. The breeze carries the scent of mint and early lavender, twining through the cloisters, whispering through windows, rustling the pages of open books, and still, the furnace breathes. Inside the workshop, Matthias is not alone. A novice joins him, a boy of 11, curious-eyed and wide-handed. His name is Elric. He watches everything, the way Matthias spins the pipe, the careful dipping of sand into flame, the slow rotation, the rhythm of patience, and at the end of the first week, he speaks just 3 words. I saw it. Matthias looks at him gently. Saw what? The breath. The boy whispers. In the glass, I saw it move. Matthias nods and smiles. They begin to work together, not fast, never rushed, but with the care of planting something deep, a seed, that will take years to bloom. Matthaeus shows him how to gather the molten bloom, how to roll it on the marva stone, flattening its surface, shaping it with soft turns of the wrist. Elric listens, watches, and learns. Each night they clean the tools, lay them in their velvet folds, tuck the furnace into its resting state, and just before they leave, Elric always looks up at the little bell, waiting, listening. Sometimes it rings, sometimes it doesn't, but the boy smiles either way. One day, as they shape a curve of amber, Matthias tells Elric the story of the first window, the one with the tree and the hidden creatures, and the strange glowing center. Elric asks about the middle piece. What did it mean? He says. Matthias pauses. I'm still listening, he says softly. Sometimes it takes years to hear. Elric frowns, but it doesn't say anything. No, Matthias agrees. But it feels everything. Outside, the world begins to hum again. Villagers return to the Abbey gates, not just for prayer, but for the warmth of the chapel windows. One woman comes with her child, eyes wide as moons. She says her daughter hasn't spoken in a year. But when the child stood beneath the west window, she whispered, "Bird." Just that one word, but a word made of colour, of breath, of wonder. The monks say nothing, but later that night, Brother Thomas wipes his eyes by candlelight. That same week, a traveller from the south brings something unexpected, wrapped in velvet, tucked inside an iron box. It's a piece of obsidian, so dark it looks like night sealed in stone. He offers it as a gift, saying it was once used in the making of scrying. Mirrors, tools for seeing the unseen. Matthias accepts it carefully, wonders if it will speak. He holds it to the light, and while it reflects nothing, he feels something stir in his chest. Not a voice, not even a word, just a waiting. That night, Matthias dreams of Ivo not as he was in life, but as a flame, small, steady, and surrounded by glass that hums with memory. He doesn't speak, but the sound he makes feels like warmth, like breath, like home. When Matthias wakes, the obsidian is still where he left it, but it feels warmer now, as though it has been listening. He begins to work it into a frame, not a pane for a window, not a chalice or bell, but a lens. He shapes it with silver trim, a handle of twisted glass, etched with spiral symbols from the old scrolls. When finished, it looks like a seeing glass, but what it shows is not the world. It shows the colors inside it. Hold it up in sunlight, and you'll see red where there is none, blue where there is only shadow, gold even in the dark. He calls it the mirror of breath, and places it on the chapel altar where any may look and wonder. Summer arrives gently, like a memory returning on bare feet. The orchard buzzes with bees, lavender blooms in sleepy purple rose, and at dusk the sky burns gold over the rolling hills, then cools into soft indigo, like ink in clear water inside the Abbey. All remains slow and sacred. Matthias continues to shape his breath into glass, and young Elric now works beside him with sure fingers, quiet but confident, the way the fire taught them both to be. One afternoon, while cleaning the workshop shelves, Elric finds something curious tucked behind old books. A page, curled at the edges, written in a hand neither of them recognizes. It's not a recipe, not a prayer, but a list. A short one, just 5 things: breath, flame, sand, waiting, a name no one speaks. Matthias reads it twice, then tucks it back exactly where it was. Some things, he thinks, are meant to stay unfinished. Elric asks no questions, only nods, as if he, too, understands. That night, the wind carries strange scents into the cloisters: smoke, salt, a hint of distant rain. The monks murmur of a storm beyond the far hills, but no clouds appear, still. Matthias feels something stirring, not in the sky, but in the breath between days. A shift in the workshop. The furnace flares higher than usual, its flames dancing with pale blue tips, flickering in strange rhythms. Matthias adds no extra wood, no oil, no air, but still the fire sways as if listening to something unheard, and when he holds his glass rod over the flame, it hums, not from heat, but from memory, like the first night he breathed into the pipe, like the whisper Ivo once left behind. The bell above the furnace rings once, then silence, the next morning. Matthias wakes before dawn. The Abbey is still, but the air feels charged, like the moment just before a word is spoken, like the second before glass begins to spin. He steps outside, and there, in the chapel garden, he finds something impossible, a tiny globe of glass, resting atop the old prayer stone. Perfect, unmarked, untouched, it glows faintly from within, as if lit by breath alone. He lifts it, it is warm, but not with fire, with memory. He shows it to no one. He places it on the highest shelf of the workshop, above the scrolls, above the marver stones, where the morning sun can reach it, and each day it glows a little brighter. Neither he nor Elric ever speak of it again, but sometimes, when the furnace is quiet and the breath of the Abbey grows still, they both look up and nod. That summer, pilgrims return to the Abbey in numbers not seen in years. They do not come for relics or indulgences or saints' bones. They come for the light. The west window, the tree with the silent center, has become something more, not a picture, a presence. Some weep when they see it, others fall silent. Children laugh, pointing to creatures no adult can find again later, but all leave changed, as though touched not by doctrine, but by wonder. One evening, a young woman with ink-stained fingers asks Matthias if the windows are magic. He smiles. No, he says gently, not magic, just listening. To what? She asks. He looks toward the glass, then to the furnace, then to her, yourself, he says, and that is enough. Late summer deepens, and with it the days stretch like golden thread. The monks walk slower now, pausing to feel sun on their faces, to brush fingers across ripening wheat, to let the hush of bees pass undisturbed. Time, in silent Abbey, doesn't move in lines. It circles, like the breath in Matthias's glass, turning, spiraling, softening. Elric begins his first window, a small roundel, only 4 pieces of glass. He chooses his colors carefully, a pale sunrise pink, a soft green like new leaves, a swirl of clouded blue touched with white, and in the center, clear. Matthias watches him work. He says little, only offers the occasional nod, the faintest gesture of hand or brow. But in his silence is pride, and in Elric's stillness, a slow-growing joy. When the window is complete, Elric holds it to the sun. It casts no picture, tells no story, but the light that falls from it feels like early morning on a quiet hill, soft, weightless. The monks place it in the cloister hallway near the old prayer bench, and from then on, even the elder brothers stop to stand there a moment longer than they need to. One afternoon, while cleaning the bench near the cloister, Elric finds a scrap of parchment tucked into a stone crack. It holds a single sentence. The breath remembers what the mind forgets. He shows it to Matthias, who only whispers, "Keep it," and Elric does. Folded beneath his robe, close to his heart, days grow shorter, the apples ripen, the lavender fades, and the bells ring more often with lower tones. Autumn comes again, though softer this time, like a familiar guest returning for a slow conversation. Matthias sits outside the workshop each evening, watching the orange sun slide down the orchard line. The sky ripens like fruit. The air smells of cooling stone and drying herbs, and he begins a new piece, a panel unlike the others, not for the chapel, not for the village, not even for the Abbey. It is for the furnace. He chooses strange shapes, fragments left over from other windows, slivers of rose, curves of sea glass green, a jagged wedge of indigo no bigger than a fingernail. He works without drawing, without plan, only by feel, and as he fits each piece into the circle, something takes shape, a spiral. No beginning, no end. A breath, he sets the panel in a frame of polished ashwood, then hangs it above the fire's alcove, not to catch the sun, but to hold the glow of flame, and when the furnace burns, the spiral flickers, moving just slightly out. Calls it the quiet eye. Matthias never names it, but every night before leaving, he stands before it for one breath, one moment, one memory, then turns away. In early October, a wind rises from the north, not sharp, but full of change. It rattles the bell above the workshop door, shakes the dried lavender bundles hung in the rafters, carries with it the scent of iron and something older, like the breath of deep earth. The monks whisper that it's the season of turning, when the veil between things grows thin, when breath becomes memory, when memory becomes story. Matthias nods. He feels it too, and so he begins to write. Not sermons, not scripture, but a book of fire and glass. He calls it the breathing flame. Its pages hold the patterns of windows long past, the marks of each piece made in silence, and the quiet teachings Ivo never said aloud, but in the margins he writes. Differently, lines like, "The flame knows what you're afraid to see. Glass sings loudest in stillness. Your breath is older than your name." Elric copies them into his own book, quietly, carefully, and so the breath continues. The first true snow falls just after matins, a quiet, steady sift of white that blankets the abbey roofs and softens the footsteps of monks on stone. Even the bells ring more gently, as though their echoes were woolen coats in the workshop. The world narrows to breath and glow. Matthias moves like a shadow through amber light, his hands familiar with every shelf, every jar of powdered cobalt, every worn wooden handle wrapped in linen. Elric hums a hymn under his breath, a tune. No one taught him. He says he hears it when the fire is low and the stars press close to the windows. They work without speaking, a rhythm between them as fluid as flame. Today they create vessels, simple, clear forms, bottles and bowls meant for oil, for herbs, for winter honey. But into each, Matthias slips a whisper, sometimes a curl of green glass, like a sprig of rosemary, sometimes a thread of gold that coils at the bottom, like a question not yet asked. To the monks, they are practical things. To Matthias, they are quiet stories. One afternoon, Brother Thomas enters the workshop holding a cracked lamp. Its base is smooth blue, its neck long and curved like the stem of a tulip. He sets it gently on the table. It was Boss. He says, the break runs clean through the base, not shattered, just split. Matthias cradles it in both hands, running his thumb along the fracture. Cool, smooth, still breathing, I think, he says. It wants to be mended, not hidden. He takes a brush dipped in powdered copper, paints the crack with delicate strokes, then carefully, patiently, he reheats the lamp, just enough to seal it again. When it cools, the copper gleams where the break once lived, a scar turned to story. Brother Thomas runs a hand over the line. He would have liked this. He's still listening, Matthias replies softly. They do not say goodbye. That night, the snow deepens. The world is lit only by firelight and reflection. Elric stays behind in the workshop after the others leave. He stands before the spiral panel above the furnace, the one with no beginning and no end. In his hand, he holds a sliver of deep purple glass, a gift from Matthias, who said nothing when he gave it, only looked toward the spiral and nodded once. Now, Elric kneels. He slips the shard into an open space at the spiral's edge. It fits perfectly, as if it had always been waiting. The moment it settles, the flame below flares once. A single clear tone chimes from the bell. Overhead, then quiet. Elric closes his eyes and listens. The days shorten into a gentle kind of stillness. Each morning begins in hush. Each evening closes with a candle and a whispered name. The Abbey slows with the season, not to sleep, but to dream. Matthias writes more now, not for others, but for the breath that carries him. Tiny notations in the margins of his logbooks, fragments like, "The glass remembers who I was before I arrived. One day I will exhale for the last time perhaps into something that holds light." He does not fear that day. He knows it will be just one more turning of the spiral, one more shape blown gently from silence. And then, one morning near solstice, a curious thing happens. No one knows how it begins, only that the star glass above the furnace catches no light, yet glows softly from within, not from fire, not from sun, from something else. The monks gather quietly in the workshop. They do not speak. Elric stands beside Matthias, hand resting on the edge of the furnace, eyes wide but calm. The glass hums, a note so soft it's felt more than heard. And as they watch, a shimmer of light rises from the center of the spiral panel, spinning slowly upward, just a wisp before dissolving in the still air. A breath returned. Later, no one will quite remember what they saw. Not clearly. Some say it was a flame shaped like a dove, others a single falling star. Some saw nothing at all, only felt warm, quiet, held, but all agree on one thing. The furnace, the spiral, the star glass, and the breath spoke, not in words, but in memory, and no one forgot the feeling. The north wind lingers, breathing round cloister arches, cooling the stones, threading through the apple tree branches now bare and listening. One dusk, as a pearl-grey fog slips in from the valley, a lone rider appears at the Abbey gate. No escort, no heraldry, only a cloak the colour of rain-soaked slate, and a bundle carried close to the chest. Brother Thomas greets the stranger. Kind eyes meet troubled ones. Few words pass, only that the traveller seeks a place of silence, and carries something fragile that must never break. Matthias is summoned to the scriptorium, where lamplight pools like honey in dark wood. There, the traveller reveals the bundle, a shard of glass, long as a forearm, thin as a breath, dark as midnight sea, yet within its depth stars seem to roam, pinpricks of silver caught in shifting ink. It is sky glass. The traveller whispers, fallen from a ruined dome in a city far to the east. They say it once roofed an observatory where monks traced comets, but now the city is dust, and this is all that remains. I was told you would know how to let it speak again. Matthias touches the edge. Cold, almost weightless, yet thrumming, like a heartbeat under stone. He nods, and the traveller exhales, as though setting down years of burden. That night, wind pushes smoke sideways from the furnace mouth. Matthias and Elric work in soft synchrony, one turning bellows, one steadying the star-glass shard in bronze tongs. They do not rush. The shard meets the fire only for heartbeats, then rests on wool to temper, then returns and rests again. Lullaby of cycles, heat, cool, listen. Heat, cool, listen. With each pass, the shard's inner silver brightens, twinkling like frost on candlewick.elric, finally asks the question floating in both their minds. What shape will it become? Matthias smiles faintly. Starglass knows its own geometry. We follow, and so, as midnight leans toward Lodz, the shard bends of its own accord, folding like slow water until a shallow dish appears a lens, thin-lipped, wide-eyed, catching furnace flame and breaking it into constellations on the ceiling. They leave it to anneal in a hush deeper than prayer. Next dawn, the Abbey wakes beneath trembling pink clouds. Matthias lifts the cooled star glass. It hums a low tide in a hidden cave. When he holds it before the west window, the great tree shivers. All its colored leaves ripple with specks of moving starlight, as though the glass has seeded night. Inside day, Brother Thomas beholds the sight and murmurs, light within light. Creation remembering itself. A decision forms without debate. The lens will rest atop the spiral panel, above the furnace, where flame can rise through it and scatter sky across the rafters. Installation is simple. For silver hooks, a cradle of woven wire, and the star-glass settles as if it has always waited for this perch. At the evening lighting of the fire, a thing unseen before occurs. Flame threads upward, touches the lens, and breaks into 1,000 slow drifting motes. They swirl across beams, glide over benches, alight on monks' shoulders like silent fireflies. Some blink, believing it miracle. Others simply breathe deeper, wrapped in gentle awe. No one speaks the word magic. They need no word. Nights grow crisper. Frost feathers garden paths. Within the glowing workshop, Elric copies more of Matthias's margin lines, adds his own in spidery scrawl. Listen to the quiet between sparks. Glass keeps the shape of silence. Together they craft lanterns filled with tiny shards that drift like snow when shaken. Pilgrims carry them home, saying the lanterns hush crying infants, calm anxious minds. Whether true or tale, Matthias only smiles. His breath travels further than his feet. Mid-autumn brings the feast of All Souls. Candles rim every walkway. Names of the departed are read in whispers that tremble like moth wings. Matthias lights. A taper for Brother Ivo, one for the unknown writer of the poem, one for the breath yet to be born. Elric lights another for a mother whose face he barely remembers, but whose lullaby returns whenever the furnace hums low. After the reading, the monks file out, leaving the chapel aglow. Matthias lingers. He lifts the mirror of breath, angles it toward the flames. In its obsidian deep, the candlelight multiplies a corridor of tiny suns. He whispers the breath remembers, and for a moment he thinks he sees Evos warm-lined, smile reflected in the farthest, faintest spark. Outside, wind gathers. The first winter star trembles above the orchard. Matthias returns to the workshop, pauses under the star-glass lens. The motes drift down around him, rest in his hair like silent snowfall. He closes his eyes, feels each spark dissolve into warmth on his skin, and hears, not with ears, but with breath, a voice as gentle as turning glass. Keep shaping the silence. There is more listening to do. He nods, opens his eyes, and sees Elric watching from the doorway, lantern in hand, eyes bright with wonder but calm with trust. "Shall we bank the fire, master?" Matthias inhales, lets the breath travel the quiet length of him, and answers in a whisper, soft as trailing smoke, "Not yet tonight." The flame wishes to dream awake. They sit side by side on the stone floor, watching sparks wheel in slow galaxies overhead, until thought loosens, until breath deepens, until the silence inside the glass sinks them toward gentle sleep. Snow continues to fall, but the cold no longer bites. It settles instead, like a soft quilt over the world. Inside the Abbey, life slows to a hush. Meals are quieter. The fire in the great hearth burns a little longer. Chants echo more gently through the stone halls, their notes trailing into shadow like distant birdsong in the workshop. The glow of the furnace remains steady, the heart of the Abbey, beating slowly, warm and deep. Matthaeus begins shaping votives. Tiny lanterns of frosted glass etched with curling ivy, spirals, moons, and names. One for each of the brothers, one for each elder window, and one left unmarked to place beside the spiral above the flame. For the breath unspoken, Elric watches. In reverence, he has learned that the shaping of names is sacred. Each carved letter is less inscription and more remembrance, not to be read, but to be felt. One morning, after Lord's brother Aldwin arrives at the workshop with something folded in linen, he says little, only places the bundle in hands and nods. Inside, a book. Old, soft-bound, the cover pressed with a worn emblem, a single spiral enclosed in a circle. Inside, handwritten pages, familiar shapes, unfamiliar hands. Matthias recognizes the flow of thought. He turns to the inside cover and finds the name Ivo. His breath catches a journal, a quiet notebook of notes, musings, reflections gathered across years of fire and silence. Matthias sits by the window and begins to read. The entries are short, some only a sentence, others a paragraph. Fire teaches not by what it destroys, but what it reveals. Every time I exhale into the pipe, I wonder, will this one hold a part of me forever? Light is memory made visible. And one, near the end, there is a boy here now, quiet, listening. He reminds me that breath is not something we own. It is something we share, like flame, like silence, like light. Matthias closes the book, places it gently atop his workbench, and lets a long, slow breath slip through his nose. Not sad, not aching, but full. That evening, he reads a passage aloud to Elric. The boy sits cross-legged near the furnace, hands folded in his lap, eyes reflecting the flicker of fire. When Matthias finishes, Elric whispers, "He wrote it for you, Matthias." Considers this, then answers, "No, Elric. He wrote it for the breath. I just happened to be listening when it arrived." The Abbey prepares for midwinter. Snow thickens around the stone paths. Icicles fringe the cloister arches. Candles are set into deep windowsills. Orange slices dry by the hearth, and the scent of clove and smoke drifts through the halls. Elric asks Matthias if they'll make a new window this winter. Matthias only smiles and gestures toward the spiral. Elric nods. He understands now. Not all windows are walls. Some are time, some are people, some are breath. The night before, the longest night, the monks gather in the chapel. No words, only lanterns, only silence. Each one brings something to place on the altar. A piece of cloth, a dried herb, a slip of paper, a shard of glass. Matthias brings the unmarked votive.elric brings the parchment he found tucked in the cloister wall. He unfolds it, reads its single sentence again, and tucks it beneath the votive as it's lit. The flame glows faintly blue for a moment. Then Seed, Brother Thomas, speaks softly, as if afraid to disturb the light on this longest night. We remember that darkness is not absence, but breath waiting to be shaped. When the gathering ends, Matthias and Elric return to the workshop. The fire is low, the bell above it unmoving. They sit together, wrapped in silence and the last scent of cedar wood. Above them, the spiral gleams in firelight. The star-glass lens flickers with phantom constellations, and Elric softly asks, "Will you always be here?" Matthias doesn't answer right away. Instead, he leans forward, gathers a breath, and exhales gently toward the fire. The bell rings once, a spark leaps, then silence. He turns to Elric and whispers, "If I'm not, the breath will be." Snow continues to fall, but the cold no longer bites. It settles instead, like a soft quilt over the world. Inside the Abbey, life slows to a hush. Meals are quieter. The fire in the great hearth burns a little longer. Chants echo more gently through the stone halls, their notes trailing into shadow like distant birdsong in the workshop. The glow of the furnace remains steady, the heart of the Abbey, beating slowly, warm and deep. Matthaeus begins shaping votives. Tiny lanterns of frosted glass etched with curling ivy, spirals, moons, and names. One for each of the brothers, one for each elder window, and one left unmarked to place beside the spiral above the flame. For the breath unspoken, Elric watches. In reverence, he has learned that the shaping of names is sacred. Each carved letter is less inscription and more remembrance, not to be read, but to be felt. One morning, after Lord's brother Aldwin arrives at the workshop with something folded in linen. He says little, only places the bundle in hands and nods. Inside, a book. Old, soft-bound, the cover pressed with a worn emblem, a single spiral enclosed in a circle. Inside, handwritten pages, familiar shapes, unfamiliar hands. Matthias recognizes the flow of thought. He turns to the inside cover and finds the name Ivo. His breath catches a journal, a quiet notebook of notes, musings, reflections gathered across years of fire and silence. Matthias sits by the window and begins to read. The entries are short, some only a sentence, others a paragraph. Fire teaches not by what it destroys, but what it reveals. Every time I exhale into the pipe, I wonder, will this one hold a part of me forever? Light is memory made visible, and one near the end. There is a boy here now, quiet, listening. He reminds me that breath is not something we own. It is something we share, like flame, like silence, like light. Matthias closes the book, places it gently atop his workbench, and lets a long, slow breath slip through his nose. Not sad, not aching, but full. That evening, he reads a passage aloud to Elric. The boy sits cross-legged near the furnace, hands folded in his lap, eyes reflecting the flicker of fire. When Matthias finishes, Elric whispers, "He wrote it for you." Matthias considers this, then answers, "No, Elric. He wrote it for the breath. I just happened to be listening when it arrived." The Abbey prepares for midwinter. Snow thickens around the stone paths. Icicles fringe the cloister arches. Candles are set into deep window sills. Orange slices dry by the hearth, and the scent of clove and smoke drifts through the halls. Elric asks Matthias if they'll make a new window this winter. Matthias only smiles and gestures toward the spiral. Elric nods. He understands now. Not all windows are walls. Some are time, some are people, some are breath. The night before, the longest night, the monks gather in the chapel. No words, only lanterns, only silence. Each one brings something to place on the altar. A piece of cloth, a dried herb, a slip of paper, a shard of glass. Matthias brings the unmarked votive. Elric brings the parchment he found tucked in the cloister wall. He unfolds it, reads its single sentence again, and tucks it beneath the votive as it's lit. The flame glows faintly blue for a moment. Then Seed, Brother Thomas, speaks softly, as if afraid to disturb the light on this longest night. We remember that darkness is not absence, but breath waiting to be shaped. When the gathering ends, Matthias and Elric return to the workshop. The fire is low, the bell above it unmoving. They sit together, wrapped in silence and the last scent of cedar wood. Above them, the spiral gleams in firelight. The star-glass lens flickers with phantom constellations, and Elric softly asks, "Will you always be here?" Matthias doesn't answer right away. Instead, he leans forward, gathers a breath, and exhales gently toward the fire. The bell rings once, a spark leaps, then silence. He turns to Elric and whispers, "If I'm not, the breath will be." Summer returns with grace, not loud, not rushed, but like a harp-string plucked by a warm breeze. The fields sway in long, lazy rhythms. The sky glows longer each evening, and even the shadows seem soft-edged and slow to fall, and in the Abbey, nothing is hurried. Everything, even the breath, moves as if in a dream. Elric rises each morning before the bells, not out of duty, but rhythm. He walks barefoot through dew-wet grass to the orchard. The glass panel still hangs between the trees. It has begun to moss at the corners. It does not sparkle now, it glows. Light pulls from it rather than shines, like a memory that remembers itself. He touches the edge gently each morning, and whispers a word, a different one every time. Sometimes a name, sometimes a feeling, sometimes nothing, just breath. The workshop is quieter now, not from absence, from peace. Elric works less often with fire, more with form. He shapes without shaping, pieces made from memory, from feeling, from dreams he cannot describe. One orb holds nothing but a single suspended breath. Another, a curl of red that never quite stops moving. He does not sell them. He does not give them away. He places them in the garden beside stones and roots where no one would think to look, except those who know how to see. One evening, as the sun lowers like melting gold, a small girl appears at the Abbey gate. She carries no pack, says no words, only clutches a dull shard of glass like it's the most precious thing in the world. Brother Thomas brings her to the orchard. Elric meets her with quiet eyes. She doesn't speak, just holds out the shard. It is cloudy, chipped, unremarkable. Elric kneels, takes it in both hands, and smiles. "I know this piece," he says, and he does. He brings her to the workshop. places the shard in the bowl of waiting, then shows her how to breathe, not how to blow glass, not how to shape fire, just how to breathe. She closes her eyes, he closes his dot, and between them the furnace hums, a lullaby of warmth and waiting. When she opens her eyes again, the shard in the bowl has changed. Not smoothed, not brightened, just settled. It looks like it belongs. The girl returns each day, saying more, smiling wider. She never asks for stories. She listens for them. Elric gives her parchment and charcoal. She draws spirals, hundreds of them, some tight and trembling, some wild and sprawling. He says nothing, just keeps one, and places it in the journal he now keeps beside Matthias's. Summer turns, the trees deepen to green, the fruit ripens on the branch, and the Abbey breathes. Pilgrims still come, some stay a day, some a year, some bring things to mend, some bring things to remember, some bring nothing at all and leave with everything. One warm twilight. Elric walks to the orchard alone. He carries no tools, no glass, only a candle. He lights it beneath the old panel between the trees. The glow rises, touches the glass, spills, spirals onto the grass. He kneels, closes his eyes, and exhales, a long, gentle breath that carries something of everything he's ever shaped, every silence he's ever held, every name he's ever remembered. It passes into the dark like mist into dawn, and when the wind picks it up, it does not vanish. It turns, slowly, softly, softly, endlessly. Spring deepens into green, as if the earth exhales all at once. The hills soften, the wind grows warmer. Birdsong begins to lace the morning hours like threads stitched through the hem of day in the orchard. Trees bloom again, a lace of blossoms, pale as breath. And in the Abbey the fire continues, not louder, not brighter, just steady, like a heartbeat heard through quiet. Elric begins a new panel, not for the chapel, not for the cloister, for the orchard, a window made to rest among branches, to hold the sky between boughs, to catch fruit-heavy sunlight, and bend it gently. He chooses colours with care, apple green, pearl white, a thin vein of soft copper, and pale gold like honey on skin. He works only at dawn when light is tenderest. Each day he shapes one piece, and when it is done, he sleeps beside the furnace, as if guarding something sacred. One morning, as he places the final piece into the frame, he hears a low flutter behind him. A dove has entered through the open window, settling on the edge of the workbench. It does not move, just watches. Elric does not shoo it. He only holds up the finished panel and lets the light fall through it onto the dove's white back. The dove closes its eyes and stays that evening. The monks carry the panel to the orchard, humming the tune Elric first sang from the tower. They hang the window between two flowering trees. It turns softly in the breeze, not spinning, but listening, and when the sun strikes it fully for the first time, the light that scatters onto the grass below takes the shape of a spiral. No one speaks, no one breathes too loudly. They simply watch, as light becomes story, and story becomes stillness. From that day forward, the orchard becomes a place of listening. Villagers begin to come, not for healing, not for glass, but just to sit, to breathe, to wait. Children lie in the dappled light and fall asleep without effort. Elders press their hands to the grass and whisper names into the wind. and all who leave carry with them the feeling of having been held by something unseen but deeply known. One morning, Elric finds a letter tucked beneath his pipe. It is not signed, only sealed with a simple spiral pressed into soft wax inside. 4 lines: you shaped the fire without fear. You listened where others spoke. You breathed without asking to be remembered. Now shape the silence. There is nothing else. He does not ask where it came from. He knows. Later that day, he adds a small panel to the back wall of the workshop. It contains only one color, clear dot, but within it, he etches words in a spiral. The breath remembers. Each visitor who enters the workshop passes by that panel. Some don't see it. Some stop and read it twice. Very few touch it with 2 fingers, then close their eyes and smile as if remembering something they thought was lost. And so the seasons turn again. Spring to summer, light to light. The spiral widens. The fire holds steady. The breath keeps moving. And the Abbey, forever quiet, forever listening, becomes not a place of monks, but of moments, where silence is shaped gently, where names are held softly, and where the warmth of flame never forgets the one who first whispered into the pipe and taught glass to remember. Spring unfurls like parchment in warm hands. The orchard blushes with new blossoms. The stream behind the chapel begins to sing again, its voice a gentle trickle over mossy stones, and with each morning a little more light lingers on the stone paths. Warmth returns to the air, not fierce, but like a familiar friend reaching for your hand. The Abbey hums with soft renewal. So, too, does the workshop, though its silence is deeper now. Matthias is not gone. His pipe remains on the workbench, his journal beside it, the spiral above the furnace still catching sparks, but his footsteps no longer echo on the flagstones. His voice no longer hums near the jars of powdered pigment. Elric, however, does not grieve as others do. He walks each day into the workshop and bows gently at the threshold, not to mourn, but to greet, for he knows the breath remains. The breath always remains. Each morning, Elric kindles the furnace himself. He has learned to listen before touching anything, to let the fire speak first. He sits near the spiral panel, watching the flame rise behind it, and sketches what he sees, not in lines and shapes, but in patterns of heat and silence. His journal now contains dozens of such pages, notations only he can read, margins filled with whispers like, "Let the breath guide the curve." Fire remembers us through form, and always, in the top corner of every page, a tiny spiral. The villagers still come, pilgrims, 2 to stand beneath the windows, to feel the glow on their faces, to sit in the cloister where the light bends differently now. Some speak of healing, some speak of dreams, some speak of nothing at all, but they all carry something when they leave: a calm, a quiet, a knowing. Many ask if the glass is enchanted. Elric only smiles and says, "It's not the glass that holds the magic, it's the breath behind it." One day, a woman brings her son to the Abbey. The boy carries a small pouch of broken sea glass. He found them after a storm, she says, and calls them sky stones. He doesn't speak often, but he dreams in color. She asks if the Abbey might do something with the pieces, something gentle. Elric accepts the pouch with both hands, nods once, and says only, "He's already shaped it. I'll just help it shine." That night, he melts the sea glass into a single smooth disc, then fuses it to a hollow stem, like the top of a staff. Within, the original blues and greens swirl like slow tidewater. No symmetry, no plan. Just breath made beautiful. He gives it to the boy the next day. When the boy holds it to the sun, a soft beam spills across the chapel floor, like the ripple of waves in a sleeping mind. The boy grins and speaks his first word in months, float. Word spreads, not of miracles, but of listening. People begin leaving small gifts at the Abbey gate, shells, feathers, worn books, notes folded into stars. ELRIC never takes them all in. Only a few. The rest he places in a carved wooden bowl beside the spiral panel, where the fire can see them. He calls it the bowl of waiting. Sometimes things vanish from it. Sometimes new ones appear. He does not question it. The breath has its own rhythm. Late one evening, as dusk stains the sky violet, Elric climbs the tower above the chapel. He carries nothing, just his breath. He sits in silence, watching the light